And so I started looking into economics because I was like, I work so hard in this industry, right? And you're fighting for this, and then you see layoffs, right? And layoffs are great because, and obviously layoffs are terrible, but layoffs are great because they're supposed to awaken you to, well, you worked really hard for 3 years, and then they went snap, right? And sometimes that's because the company fails. Sometimes it's just because they want, higher marks on their stock sheet. And maybe the company didn't fail, maybe it succeeded, and you still got laid off. And so what is the unraveling of programming that kind of sets us in a certain pace. And then I started questioning everything, and then I realized that economics, or just like looking into certain economic laws, be it like prices law, there's Pareto principle, there's natural distribution, there's all of these things that are operating in the background of everything, absolutely everything that we're doing. And art can be optimized through those exact same things, because at the end of the day, we're exchanging value. So it's all maths. It is all maths. It's just we ignore the maths.
Please welcome senior Hardsurface artist Rene Mitchell-Lambert to this episode of the Learn Squared podcast. Rene is obsessed with design and how to execute it perfectly. His approach has seen him successfully work on projects like Star Citizen, Splitgate 2, The Division 2, and more. When this episode was recorded back in the summer, Rene had just got word that he was part of the recent spate of layoffs happening across the industry. And in this episode, Rene shares his experience and thoughts around this, as well as his strategies to get back into work, which worked to a T, as at the time of airing, Rene has secured work since. So let's jump in and hear from Rene himself about all of this, as well as musings on design, how he's going about helping other students and fellow creatives, how many lights one needs in their viewport, and much more. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Learn Squared podcast, and delighted to welcome on the amazingly talented Rene Mitchell-Lambert. Welcome, Rene.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Before we get into all the good stuff, just looking forward to just obviously chatting with you. I've bumped into you a few times at events, but not had a proper conversation. Amazing work you have, so why not have a conversation on the podcast? But before we get into all that good stuff, if you wouldn't mind just giving everybody a quick lowdown as to who you are and what you do.
Right. So I'm Rene. I've been designing for about 7.5 years now. And I'm a concept designer. So I specialize in hard surface, doing mostly environments and vehicles. I do have a personal passion towards vehicles, but I do both. And also props in general. I began my career as a prop artist. So, that still is something quite deeply ingrained in my DNA, I guess. Yeah.
Sick. How did you settle on concept designer? Is that your end goal? Is that the role you've just ended upon for now and there's something else ahead?
So it's kind of, I guess, the end goal, and also I feel like it's what I am, because so for me, the difference with concept design versus concept art, I feel like concept artists are people who have like these kind of pretty pictures, right? They paint these amazing landscapes. There's something kind of like visually enticing. You can call it key art, but also it's the idea of they're selling the kind of dream and ideas, that kind of direction. Whereas what I do is actually very, most of my work is not rendered. Most of my work is not pretty. It's actually just Viewport, Maya Viewport, pure functional, right? It works. The modeling's technically good, right? Instead of it being kind of like, oh, someone has to come in and do stuff, it's like, no, it's half production almost. So it's less pretty and more design, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
And yeah, like the best way I can put it is all the Splitgate work I've uploaded recently has been rendered only now. Because for the last 3 years, I would just work, viewport, send a screenshot, send the model.
Sick.
So that's why I say I'm more of a designer than an actual artist. It's not really pretty. It's just, it's functional. Yeah.
So rendered, was that just for purely promotional reasons?
Yes, purely for ArtStation promotion, just so that it's not a Viewport. My show reel is Viewport rendered, actually. It's playblast of Maya's Viewport, which obviously most people don't do, but often when you're trying to, present for a portfolio, you're trying to render it to the highest quality, and that's going for realism. Viewport is stylized, especially in Maya, because the light is being projected from the camera, which is not very realistic, but it's good at showing forms. right? Whereas a render
Yes,
forms might be
yes.
hidden in shadows. So I prefer to do the viewport if forms is my focus. And because of that reason, yeah, and plus I'm just impatient. I don't like rendering, and my
Yeah.
computer's not that fast. They're like, do you know what I mean? It's a mixture of things.
Sick.
Yeah.
Okay, let's geek out about viewports.
Yeah.
Even with that said,
Yeah.
does your computer start choking up with the stuff that you're throwing in the viewport?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the thing is my viewport, and it's funny because recently a concept artist at Gearbox asked me on ArtStation specifically, how do you get your Maya viewport to look like that?
Okay.
And it's like, yeah, so I set up a lot of lights. Maya's default limits you to 8 lights. I kind of push it to 32. I don't think it actually gets to 32. I think it stops around 22. But and this is from all the
Sorry,
experiments.
2022 individual
In 22
lights.
individual lights, Maya's very bad. It's nothing like Blender. With
Yeah.
Eevee, you can just throw in lights, right? And you can have a sun, and Maya's just too limited. And so I would kind of like, I do like a whole light setup. So I'll put one light in, I turn on like ray trace shadows, I push certain settings. So I optimize one light and then I will duplicate it. And then the shadows are cleaner and it looks better. But it comes at the cost of performance, like you said. Through research that I've actually done, testing between my PC and my laptop, I realized that the performance is GPU based, even though, it's not like it looks like a next generation game, but there's a weird, like, there's bad optimization between the lighting and the GPU, but it is GPU based because it was slower on a laptop that had a faster CPU. So I was like, okay, I'm constantly trying to like optimize it.
Sick.
Don't ask, this is just how I am. But
No, this is fascinating, man.
yeah, so that's why my Maya viewport does look a bit better. And then with the show reel, I couldn't take on the chance of the frame drops. Like it drops really badly, so I play blasted the animation instead, and that enables me to get the frames out as JPEGs and then build it in like After Effects or whatever. So yeah, that's a bit of viewport.
How? So just to clarify,
Yeah.
when you're adding those 20-odd lights, is that only when you're just sending off work, or is that
No,
actually whilst you're modeling as well?
That's what I'm
from the beginning
modeling
to
in,
process?
and I model with lights on. So this is like I guess like a key point, and it's something I've taught a lot of them in the mentorship is like model with lights on, so you can see what will be visible. And what won't be visible in shadows. So I used to have a bad habit, especially when I was in university, of over detailing my 3D models. And then you go to render it and it's just like tons of topologies just not hit, like it's just hidden. It's, or like, if you have like an object here and you have an object here, it's like, you put this object down here for negative space, but when you put the light on, it's always in shadow. And you can't really see its outline as well as you thought you could. So instead, I just turn the light on in Viewport, and then I work with that. And at all times, I now know what will be roughly seen, and what roughly won't be seen. And Maya's Viewport's good because the light is coming from the camera. So as I'm rotating, I can constantly. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
it's just
yeah,
about being
yeah.
more efficient, I think. Yeah.
No, sick. That makes actual sense because, like you just said, like as you're crafting, as you're doing this, literally things are not in shadow.
Yes.
Like as you move around, it's still shown.
Yeah.
That brings back a bit of PTSD, but also from back in the day, like experience. I used to my first introduction to 3D was Alias, Alias Auto Studio.
Okay.
And from there, obviously everything's like kind of like wireframe or whatever
Yeah.
before you even get to render the shaded view. But a lot of it was the zebra analysis,
Yes.
or like the curvature analysis. So it just kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of that, like constantly checking surfacing or whatever. And obviously, if you can't get it right, then you just kind of ignore it and try and like fudge it a little bit as well
yeah.
before to get like, was it G3 surfacing, whatever it is.
Yes, yeah.
But that kind of, it's the same kind of thing, right? So you don't have to, do you switch between different setups, or is that literally that one setup and that's all you need to work on form?
So the setup changes just if the size of the object is too big, right? So if I'm working on a small prop, I will make its own little light. And sometimes one light's enough if you have one small prop. With things like the car, like the truck I've done, that's like 15 lights. It's a lot of lights. And some of that is for like just trying to get the idea of like what would the headlights casting light on the floor be like, right? So that's not even on the model, but it's still a light, and the computer's still like, oh, why are you doing this? But for me, it's like it helps sell the idea to me as I make it. And basically,
Yes.
if we think about it from like up above, what I'm trying to do is just make the modeling process immersive. Right, so instead of me just looking
Yeah.
at a grey viewport, considering I spend so long in front of it, it's kind of like let me at least make it visually appealing to me as I work on it. And that's why I also will, I'll also switch colors a lot. So the color of the truck, the color of my work in general, I will change the colors. I'll make it blue one day, and then maybe I'll make it yellow, and I'm just refreshing. So I'm seeing how the design looks during different colors. I'm seeing how the design looks with lights at different areas. I'm just constantly testing it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That actually makes complete sense, and it's actually quite genius. Like, it's just so logical. So kudos. When did that start? How long have you been doing that process now?
That started, I want to say, I think it was Ubisoft days. So I think when I was about 21, which would be what, 2018-ish, around there. Because all through university, I just wasted time on inefficiency. And then when I got to Ubisoft, I think I did one of those spaceships. It was like that sci-fi spaceship. I don't know how to explain it. It's a sci-fi spaceship before the ArtStation ambulance drone, right? And the issue with that is that the forms looked cool, but I couldn't tell just like exactly how cool they were, and then a lot of work just was kind of like hidden, and I was like, okay, there must be a way around this. Do you know what I mean? It's and also scale. I think light's good for showing scale, and my scale was off on that ship. If you look now, you look at it, it's like things are kind of badly scaled because of it. And so it's not like I saw anyone do it. It was just kind of my own. I'm always trying to find more efficient ways. And I'm always trying to figure it out myself, if that makes sense. Obviously, it's faster to read or see someone's YouTube video. But for me, of course. I do go through that own path myself as well. So
that's sick. It's also like fascinating because all these tips and tricks that we get, it's like, I guess, the equivalent of like, I don't know after how many years, generalizing, but everybody's like photo shot brushes set is like kind of borrowed from like 17 different people and it's kind of remodified and stuff. And it's the same like in music production as well, which is something I dabble in. It's like different sounds are just originated from like a simple waveform and kind of like tweaked and added and affected, and then it kind of like it just gets printed out or baked using 3D terms, and then kind of like reuse it again. It's just like constant just recycling, repurposing, and retweaking and stuff. Definitely. But that's also fascinating as well, because obviously you found that this was something that you needed, but how long did it take before you realized that, it's a light thing? Was that like almost instantaneous?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think it was instantaneous. I think that's a good point. So first I would have seen I over detail and I can't see these details. So that first thing was, it's a scale thing. Right. And the first step was, okay, I'm too zoomed in when I model. Right. So the first thing was zooming out. And then it was kind of like, I think from that point, I was a bit better at it. But I would argue that the light thing came from being bored of the viewport. Right. And then realizing that it solved this other issue by trying to make it more pretty. I also went, I can also see what's not seen. Do you know what I mean? So I'm bored of the viewport. I add a light in. I go, that looks better. And then I go, I can't see that anymore though. Do you see what I mean? It was like that process. And then from then I was like, okay, always use the light and also just make your art pretty in the viewport. Do you know what I mean? Like it became, I think it was it's a combination of things, I'd say.
Sick. How quickly did it make an impact on your designs?
Oh, very quickly. Very quickly, yeah. So what happened was I did that. The next model after that was the ambulance drone. And I would argue that ambulance drone was significantly better than the ship before it. Both in terms of just like readable forms and more grounded forms, but also in terms of where the detail distribution was placed, right? So, and I think this is something now I'm kind of obsessed over it now, of like, because like, how do you optimize where you're putting your work and effort, right? We say work smart over like work hard and stuff like that, but what is working smart? And so for me, I think it's efficiency. I think it's, and I mean, we're game developers or concept artists, right? So we know that GPUs, when you have a game, let's say you have a Nintendo game, for example, right? We understand that things further away are lower levels of detail, right? You have LODs. right? So there's a thing with like screen space and its importance and then its level of rendering. And so when I'm designing, I'm thinking from that perspective of in this design, Pareto principle, right? What is the top 20% of this design that actually matters versus the lower 80% that people are either not going to see, not care about, or is going to be stuck in shadow. And so I think all of it has come to this. That's me now, but back then it was just trying to figure out where all my wasted time is going. I worked hard, but I can't see in my design what I put in, right? Like, and if you've seen the best project I'd say is the ambulance drone. Like that model is full quads. It's I think 17 million polygons. That's before smoothing. Right, so that's what I modeled, right? Like I modeled that. And me personally, I don't use plugins. I don't even Boolean very much, like hardly ever. So that was a lot of work. And then I had to get to the rendering stage, and I was just like, I still can't see some of my stuff better than the shit before, but I still was like, there's a lot of like tiny details, you know, like something this big that I put tons of detail into and you can't see it. So even then I'm just constantly optimizing. Same with the truck. I'm still doing it. I'll always be like this, but I'm just constantly getting a bit better with time.
Sick.
Basically. Yeah.
Sick. I love to hear it, but also it's like from my own journey with that kind of stuff, definitely not to the level that you've done it, but I have like I have the same conversations, but I guess in different ways or different aspects. It can get torturous. Does it get torturous for you?
Which part? The efficiency or is it what part would you
I guess
say
whichever one is there one that's more than the other? Like the aspect of anything that you do that just feels like, I wish I didn't have to worry about this. I wish this didn't have to be dealt with.
I think a lot of it. I think there's a lot of struggle when it comes to the limitations of Maya's Viewport. I've pushed it, but Blenders is definitely better. And I do sometimes export models into Blender then render it. So like the big portal from Splitgate 2 on my ArtStation, that's rendered in cycles. Because I exported it and I was like, at this scale, so Maya struggles with actual scale. Some of the models I've worked at are so big that Maya's shadows stop casting once you get to a certain size. So stuff like that portal is huge. I was like, no, that has to go into Blender. So I'd say like lighting, definitely one of the tedious. The way I model is quite tedious, but I don't want to change it. Part of that is being stubborn. Part of that is craftsmanship. I like the idea of I modeled this and I didn't rely on any plugin coded by someone else and blah, 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 blah. That's partly ego, let's be honest. I
like it.
But I'm still, there is that craftsmanship to it. And, I would say that's sometimes tedious. Like a good example is that truck that's taken me forever to work on. Every time I look at it, I'm like, I've got to sub D these external forms, right? So I know there's a step where I have to sub D everything. Not everything internally, but at least everything on the outside so that it can reflect when I render it. And Maya's Viewport is good at hiding certain artifacts or modeling artifacts, if that makes sense. But Keyshot is terrible, and obviously I shouldn't be rendering in Keyshot. That's another story. But Keyshot will catch any problem you have and like exacerbate it. It'll be a huge thing, and so there's little steps like that along the way. Yeah.
Interesting. So that's where like I guess my journey diverged a little bit. I started off obviously Alias, but then it ended up in Maya. And then it was Keyshot.
Right.
Before that, it was, I don't know if you heard of Bunk Speed.
No. I've never heard of this.
So I think that was the precursor to what Keyshot, basically it's not what Keyshot does. It's like, it's just a studio, dropping shaders, bringing your model, and that's it. I think it's what Daniel Simon used for Cosmic Motors. Okay. Or a lot of the auto industry use that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It was super expensive. I only had it at uni. But then when Keyshot came along, whatever. But yeah, it was literally, bringing a model in, and I was a tessellation issue or whatever else. There's always something broken or something messed up. Obviously, then I just thought, Photoshop, I can just massage it out and then just continue. But I respect that you just kind of like, no, I'm going to fix it in model. Now, obviously, we'll get into like how that can benefit on the job, in work, on a game, for example. But do you think it's for yourself, is it more just a satisfaction that it's complete and it's resolved and everything's perfect?
Yeah, so it's two things. Like, 100% part of it is the satisfaction. Like, I know the model's fine, especially if I do have to hand it over. The other aspect is that my drawing skill is not that great. So even if I was to try and figure it out or solve it, there's a likelihood it wouldn't match my render or even viewport screenshot. I can do paint overs, like I'm used to doing loads of paint overs, and I do that for the mentorship, I do that for work, but the paint overs are not as good. And also, I don't know how it is for other people, but I think in 3D. So once I go into Photoshop, I'm no longer the designer I am in 3D, and whatever I'm drawing is not what I would have done in 3D. It's just me trying to draw. And that's had its own problems where people are like, oh, can you just start with some sketches? It's like, I can, but whatever I'm sketching is not going to be my design language. It's not the way I think. So I can do it, and I've done it, which is performative, right? Like, I do it because you asked me to do it. But once we go into 3D, I'm going to change all of that because that's not good design, right? That's me trying to draw. So you see
No, that's good. That's good that you recognize, obviously, that's your strength, and that's where you can excel the most.
Yes,
and again, it's an efficiency thing. Like, in this setting or in this workflow, there's no friction. I can do what I need to do at my best possible ability.
Yeah.
But that just brings back again some older memories of like school, college, or whatever. Like 3D, I picked up towards the end of when I was finishing uni. I finished like 2010.
Okay.
But back then it was like a very rigid kind of like process. Like you sketch, you take the sketch, then you either, obviously back then it was like clay sculpting or maquettes or whatever, and then obviously people who can model it will model it, and it has to start from this specific, like I guess a seed, and then it has to go through stages. And I guess like many years after, I kind of said myself, like, it was like, oh, you can just mix it up however you want and just do what you need to do and dive in. Did you experience that as well? Did you experience that, okay, this is the structure and you have to kind of like just fit into this?
This is a very good question. It's actually crazy you asked this. This is what I went through in university. And it's funny because I had to mention it. I went to my university to give a talk. It's been 10 years since I left.
Sick.
In November. And I did tell them that, like, so when I was in uni, Vitaly Bulgarov was doing straight into 3D, but overall concept art was mostly the 2D aspect of it, right? So there are people who had fusions of them, or they just designed straight in 3D, but it was more of a luxury. And the school curriculum was, and I suspect it still is, that someone who wants to do concept art draws, and they design, right? So design was gate kept to people who could draw. The best designers are not always people who can draw, and the best 2D artists who can draw are not always the best designers. However, that's how the school saw it. So on my second year project, I had that where one of my I was going to say co-workers, but we're in university. But one of my friends, he was the 2D concept art. He wanted to be a concept artist. So he had to design a vehicle, even though I was better at doing vehicles in 3D. But because of the way the curriculum is built, he designed the vehicle in 2D. Then I had to become the modeler and then model the vehicle, right? And that's the problem with it. It's kind of like, it doesn't actually make logical sense if the better vehicle designer is in 3D. Do you know what I mean? You get this kind of clashing. And so that's what happened. Now, my solution was that I just did loads of 3D in the background, like 3D designs, original designs. So, the lectures and all of that, I would do what they wanted. But before university, I would be doing personal work. And that was my own designs. That's where the spaceships and all of that stuff started from. And then when I graduated, my actual show reel was very weird because I had so much personal work that the show reel it hardly had any of the actual schoolwork, right? And I've carried on that forever. So even when I was a pop artist at Ubisoft, design wasn't the main thing, but I just made spaceships in the background. Do you see what I mean? I just put it on my art station. I don't care. And then eventually you can kind of, and I say eventually, it might take 10 years, but you can brute force your way into what you want if you do that thing enough and you show yourself doing that thing enough, right? So that's why, that is it. But yes, there was a very rigid kind of understanding of 2D do the design. And I would argue it's still like that. I would argue, because now I'm looking for work, right? So I'm like, when I see the application process, a lot of it is sketch, this, that. And I get it. It's because of the speed. Someone who's like an immense concept artist can truly, in 10 minutes, they can sketch something that will take me about 5 hours. If they're like at the highest level, they can do that. And so I totally understand why it's like that. A lot of people can't though. Like I am still relatively fast in 3D. If I go like full power, I can do a project in a day. So it's just that. But you have to sell that idea to someone. Like most people are just used to sketches. You'd have to sell them that idea. Do you see the problem? So
Yes.
yeah.
Now, did you find that, like, did you resist to that stuff? Did you kind of already foresee that, okay, I'm gonna end up doing things my way eventually, I'm just gonna kind of ride this out, and then, or did you kind of like, did you freak out a little bit and think that, okay, well, clearly this is what I guess the curriculum or the industry expects or needs. Yep. Do I have to kind of like restructure the way I do things?
I'm going through this right now. This is an amazing question. So back then, my sights were like, so when I was in university, I wasn't bothered about the industry or stuff. I was just like, I want to beat Vitaly Bulgakov. That was my mindset. It was insane, right? Sick. But that's what motivated me. And not beating Vitaly Bulgakov isn't like, it was like, his art's amazing. I want to be this good one day. But sure. I know of course, to reach someone's level, you normally need to aim above it so that you can fail on it, right? So that's the mindset I went in with. And because of that, my focus was modeling, design, and rendering. It was not, how do I get an entry-level job in the beginning, at least. Do you know what I mean? I was just doing my own thing. It wasn't so much rebellion as I did do what they wanted. I just did more on top, right? Versus not doing what they want and doing what I want. Does that make sense? And I've always been that way. Like, I always will do what I want in the background and also do what you want. And it works for companies very well because you're happy and I'm happy, right? Like, do you see what I mean? There's no crashing. So yeah, I would say like, yeah, it was definitely that idea, but I feel like I'm going through that with this now. Like I said, right? It's kind of like I'm looking for jobs and stuff, and especially because I'm around senior level, at least senior level, right? So it's kind of like, because I have to look for that, they expect seniors to be able to do like everything, frankly, because you know, obviously due to layoffs, they've whittled everything down. So they have only a few people. And so when you have a few people, you need that few people to do everything. And so you need this kind of generalist, like upper aspect. Now, when I was in school, it was different because I felt that the industry had more capacity to take on me if I got good enough. And technically it did, hence it took on me, right? Whereas now I'm like, no, the industry has shrunk and they don't really have capacity because I can see amazing artists being fired every day. So I can see that there's not actually that lenience in there. And so the question now is, do I have to readjust for that? And then I get into the whole efficiency thing and I go, is it efficient for me to try and learn how to draw now to catch up with my friends like Sheng Lam who are already 10 years ahead? Or is it more efficient to almost just change industry entirely and keep the 3D and then just learn a new software and go around the back door? Right? So there's like, and this is what I mean, I'm in that kind of decision paralysis as I'm trying to like figure out all these.
No, I get it, man. I'm in the same boat. Like, again, in a similar conversations, again, just maybe different parameters are kind of like switched around a little bit, but it's like, oh shit. Same. I'm looking for concept artwork and it's like, where do I even fit in? How do I even fit into this? Oh, what they're saying is like, and mine's a bit of a weird thing. Not to give a little bit of a tangent about myself,
no, it's all good. No, please do.
I'm very weird with forms. Forms throw me off. I see job descriptions as forms because I will take every bullet point literally and be like, well, hold on, this is a bit of a contradiction here. And all that kind of stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe it's not right for me. Maybe it would have been, who knows, but whatever. So then it's kind of like, I think you're similar as well. Like, it sounds like, okay, well then I'm just going to double, triple down on what I know. And just kind of like, you know, let's see how good that can go. And maybe, like you said, find another way in or whatever else. But what's your current take on it at the moment? Because I'm sure, like, obviously, every so often you maybe come to a different conclusion or feel like, no, let's try this. Yep. All those things that you listed, and it's absolutely valid. And again, people that I've spoken to, I'm sure it's people that you've spoken to as well, are going for the exact same thing of like, how the hell do I get back into work after being in work? Yes. It's almost like, you know, and there's also psychology involved in that, and that's maybe we can definitely go into as well. But what's your current diagnosis and what's your prescription to the diagnosis for yourself?
So my current diagnosis for myself is that I should push production, actually. So instead of going towards the concept art route, it's almost like, because I do have the production background, right? It's like, when it comes to the drawing aspect, I have many more stages to go. Whereas when it comes to the can I get this into engine aspects, right? So a low poly, baking, substance painter, texturing. I just haven't done that stuff in 7 years. But some of the knowledge is there and I'm not starting from scratch. Right. And so I think it's faster for me to re-up those skills and then go for a production role where I design, right? And then maybe you can get a production role where it's a well-paid one because I also remove the need for a concept artist, right? I go all the way from high-level concepts all the way to production, right? I think there's more value in that than me going, oh, time to look at Scott Robertson's book, which is what I was doing literally this week. I'm going to go through this whole book. And like, when I look at that timeline, I'm like, that timeline's ridiculous. And the issue is as well, if I do that aspect, that doesn't mean I have a better chance of getting a job because I've seen loads of people who are incredible at drawing getting laid off. So, but I know that at the end of the day, to make a game, you need the end production. You can cut the corners in the beginning, and arguably AI, to an extent, is going to start cutting the corners at the beginning as well, right? So, but production is something they can't cut corners on just yet, at least to the same level. And the production is required because that's what's handed to the gamer. Whereas concept art is not handed to the gamer; it's handed to the modelers, right? So, I'm kind of looking at what is this system and how can I take the highest leverage move I can, right? That's my recent obsession. Efficiency and leverage. Just like figuring out how to do the most with the least, if that makes sense.
Yes,
And part of that is because I'm tired. I've been working 10 years straight. I'm like 20,000 hours into my life. Like, do you know what I mean? I've done so much work. And it's like, how long can I do this for? I have to ask real questions, right? Like, I'm 30 this year and I have to ask how long is the average concept artist's career? Am I going to be doing this at 40? Am I going to be doing this at 50? At 50 years old, am I fast enough to take on an 18-year-old who's hungry, who isn't even born yet? Like, you have to ask these real questions as to what is the long-term trajectory of what you're doing, right? And so I'm constantly kind of thinking about these things. And I think because of that, yeah, I'm aiming more the production aspects for sure. Yeah.
Sick. You mentioned drawing.
Yeah.
What do you mean specifically by drawing? Like the act of drawing, or more the impression of speed it gives to clients?
So it's the ability to convey an idea in a short amount of time, and so I would say it's not the act of drawing itself. It's just the ability to sketch an idea and then be able to either understand what you're trying to do or prove it. The main issue right now that I have is if someone goes, okay, we need a it just reminded me of, okay, so Benjamin Last, right? I think he posted on his Instagram once that he did a sketch for the Batmobile. And he said, they gave me 6 hours or 4 hours. They gave him something stupid, right? And they were we need a design within 6 or 4 hours. And I was like, I couldn't do that. If someone was to hit me up and go, and by the way, one of my I think it's my only goal I have before it was getting to Star Citizen. I had goals own the car I had. There were goals, but the only one I have now is I just want to make the Batmobile for the movie. I want to make a Batmobile for the movie, right? That's kind of iconic. It's long lasting. That's the kind of the highest ego-driven goal I have. Otherwise, I don't care about a lot of stuff. But that was that would be cool. Do you know what I mean? But when and obviously he designed on it as well as Ash Thorpe, but when he showed the sketch, they asked him for 4 to 6 hours. I thought, so even if they were to email me and say, sure, you can work on the Batmobile, but we're only giving you 6 hours, I would be like, what am I supposed to do with that? And I have done designs the COVID truck and the motorbike on my art station. They were done in 7 hours, right? So I will get them a design, but it definitely won't be the best thing I could have done. And so with 2D, you're able to possibly reach the best conclusion in a sketch. Do you see what I mean? And that's the kind of, and again, that's what they value. I don't value that. I have no problem spending a week to get a good design, but they value time and speed. So because that's valuable to them, I then go, okay, it's better if I can draw. Me personally, give me a month and I'll give you the best design ever in 3D, and it'll be done and it'll be modeled and it'll be animated, and you won't need anyone else until you want to, do you know what I mean? But it's just because speed is pushed so much externally. I like taking my time. I don't like rushing. I don't like going at speed. I can do it, but it's not fun to me,
Yeah. I mean, one thing that definitely stands out with the Batmobile thing is the fact that it's a movie. and I haven't worked on a film yet, but the conversation that I've had and all the behind the scenes footage and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which I guess makes me an armchair expert, is like just the speed and the amount of conversations that I had and the amount of things that I discarded, like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
It's
Who knows what it was
ridiculous.
for?
It's insane.
Let's just fill in some gaps. Oh, I need to pitch this to somebody else. Oh, well, we're not going to give you a budget. This guy looks sick. Why do you need X amount of dollars for a
Yeah.
Batmobile? Okay, 6 hours ago, a meeting with some exec. Who knows? Maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not.
Exactly.
All that kind of stuff. What's the longest or the shortest time you've been given to produce a sketch or a concept?
The Moab, I think the Star Citizen Moab missile I have on the art station. I think that was a week. And I think a week is probably the shortest timeline. I've been very fortunate. I have to say this about my career, right? I've been fortunate that one, I've worked at companies where they just accepted that I'm a 3D artist who designs, right? So most of the time, they've kind of overlooked that drawing aspect. And also, I've been fortunate in that I have not been given insane deadlines. So I spoke to someone recently who's working on like the new Battlefield, and they were like, "Oh yeah, this needs to be done by the end of the day." And I saw it, and I was like, and this was at Concepts, not 101, but CG 101 this year. And I looked at what they did, and I was like, "Yeah, no, like it's insane." Different companies have completely different kind of standards in terms of speed, and I've just been fortunate, I'll be honest, when it comes to that. With Ubisoft, I was because it was a whole prop, the design was just taken as part of that process, but I was given the timeline of a prop, right? So that's more time. When I was at Star Citizen, they are so quality focused that they just give you they do give you time, right? That's why the game looks consistently so good everywhere, right? There's no cut corners. And Star Citizen is one of the only games where I can play the game, I can look at every panel line, every detail, every bolt. There's nothing wrong. Like this thing is very well kind of like it's a well-oiled machine in that the quality is just extremely high. It takes forever, sure, but it's insanely high at an insane scale. Ubisoft was not like that. Ubisoft is more like, it's a machine. You just kick out, kick out. This is wrong. That's a bit wrong. That's a bit wrong. Oh, well, it's a big city. No one's going to know. Right.
Right.
And then Splitgate I was given, I'd say a good amount of time again. Yeah. But one thing I would say is that you can give me time because I'm doing a lot of the modeler's job. Right. So the time that it takes a concept artist and a modeler, I can maybe hit about 70% of it. So maybe you have a 30% delta where if you had both of them, maybe both of them would have been faster in some ways, but slower than others. The concept person would have been done quicker. The modeler, depending on their skill level, will either struggle to get the concepts in or won't, right? And then on top of that, there'll be this kind of like, and I call it like a translation layer, where like the 3D artist might miss the forms that the 2D artist actually had in mind. Whereas with me, I remove all of that. Every form I want is modeled, and every form I want will reach the end deadline, right? And so for that, I think the time extra makes sense, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Sick. With that said, now that you can do, because you can do so much and you're very efficient, does that ruffle feathers in the production, or is it the opposite?
I've never heard them actively say anything. I do know, like, some people have told me, like, yo, you're basically doing all their job. To an extent, sometimes yes. Like, I've figured out everything, right? I've figured it out before I handed it off. In some aspects, there's that. Some 3D modelers will redo the model, if that makes sense. Because it's easier for them to work with what they know versus working with a foreign model, which I totally understand. I don't take that personally. That was more Star Citizen. So I might hand them something and they'll just remodel it. And they do that a lot for other artists as well who do concepts. But I wouldn't say ruffle. I've never heard like active, like disgruntled, I hate this. Maybe it does, and I've just never heard it. That's totally possible. But yeah, that's been it really.
Oh, that's fascinating. It's a fascinating topic because usually you hear when someone doesn't do enough, and that's what ruffles feathers, because it's like, oh, you're giving me too much to do, or whatever to do.
Yes.
But then there's like clearly, like, there's maybe a scenario where, oh, you've done everything, there's nothing to do.
There's nothing to
which
do.
I guess
I get very
is
close
fine.
to that. Yeah.
Is like, it's fine because it's like, oh, well, the job's done, I guess, from a managerial perspective or from, higher ups. But then like I guess I'm just like imagining, just conjuring up different kind of like scenarios. But like,
If they enjoy that.
what does that do to a team when someone's prepared to do something, but then they kind of like don't need to?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then like look at like team sports or whatever. Like if one man's carrying the whole
If they
team,
carry, yes, of course. Yeah.
then when that person can't carry, I'm not saying that's the case, but it's just interesting, that kind of stuff. So I was wondering if you've experienced that, or I guess clearly you haven't, and it's like everyone's kind of just happy and you do their job for them, I guess.
I think so one thing about Star Citizen's team in general, and the reason why I mentioned Star Citizen more is because they like their models are insane. Right? Their models are insane. And so what it is even when you push a model, I've seen some concept models by people like Michael Oberschneider, Gavin Rothery. They do like the big ships, and the model they're handing over is just out of this world. It might be 60 million polygons. It's crazy. This is crazy stuff. And what it is even though they did all of that work, there's still tons of work left, if that makes sense. So obviously there's the like trim decaling, UVing, texturing, and all of the engine stuff that comes after. But sometimes it will just be like, I couldn't solve that. I didn't have enough time to solve that part. And then they'll need design help in those aspects, or they'll be able to fill it in themselves. Totally depends on the modeler. And so what it is normally there is enough left. And often I get the opposite, actually. Splitgate, a lot of Splitgate was the opposite, which is I send over a model and they're just like, we don't have production time for this. And I'm like, I've done the model. And they're like, yeah, but even the time to transfer this model in is too much.
Interesting.
Right? So then they start cutting things back. And what happened specifically on Splitgate is actually my models got simpler and simpler and simpler as the years went on. So I got better at doing more with less. This is part of the efficiency side. But also my designs became relatively muted, I'll be honest. At the beginning, I was wild. Like, everything I've posted so far was like the beginning aspects. So you can see like the twisted carbon. Do you know what I mean? I kind of went crazy. I was just like, throwing stuff at the wall. And then what happened is, unlike Star Citizen, because Splitgate is a fast-paced multiplayer shooter, people aren't seeing it the same way. Their field of view is different. They're looking for readability. They're not looking for beauty. They're running past everything and they're shooting, and they're not worried about space exploration and finding out new things. And so I basically learned the differences between different genres of games and the importance of design in those games, right? But what it meant is that all the detail I was putting in, either one wouldn't be seen, two isn't going to run on an Xbox One because it had to be ready to run on last gen, whereas Star Citizen runs on PC max settings, it doesn't matter, right? There's all of these aspects that I had to think about while designing, and so eventually I just started simplifying.
Sick.
Yeah.
Well, you've answered my follow-up question, which is
So-
no, that's fine. Which is the trade-off thing. Like, obviously, when you said that, like the efficiency, that must have been perfect. Like, oh, now I've streamlined my workflow even more, and I can kind of achieve what needs to be achieved with less. But then, like you said, it was kind of like restricting a little bit because things were muted.
yeah.
So do you, and I guess like with anything, with any project, and it's not even just like art stuff, like life stuff, there's always different scenarios, different missions to,
Exactly.
to resolve, and you kind of have to pick your weapons and tools that you need and just go ahead with it. And you might not have the ideal ones, but you still got to get it done.
Yeah.
So do you like the fact that like there's a different kind of approaches and you can meet them, or do you prefer a particular way of working now?
I prefer a particular way for sure. I'm very detail oriented. I prefer I prefer just pushing the benchmark. I'm not someone who wants to be, I'm just going to do what's necessary and then we can ship it. And, like a lot of people are like big picture focused. I think big picture, but I'm focused on details. So, I can comprehend it, but I don't want to do that. I would rather, that truck that still isn't posted right now, but is in my show reel. I've been working on that for almost 3 years, on and off, right? And the reason for that is because I was like, no, I want this to be the best truck ever. That's it.
Okay.
And I've watched Noax's, like me and Noax are good friends, and I've watched his Lens Squared, and he has a very similar mindset when it comes to a lot of things. And this is one of them, right? There's the idea of like, you just want the benchmark. You do want to make the best thing ever kind of thing. And, some games can allow that and some don't. Star Citizen allows it, right? Like, a very large ship on there can take 6 months in concept stage. Just concepting for 6 full months. right? No other company's going to do that, right? They're like, well, no, we need the whole ship done in like 2 months, right? And that's why that resonates with me personally. So I'll definitely say I'm not a fan of restriction. I'm obsessed with efficiency and looking at the big picture. So I use it as an exercise. Oh, I need to make this I need to make this in a day. Okay, what's the most important thing on this vehicle? How do I get this to you in a day? That's a task, but I don't enjoy it. Do you see what I mean? I enjoy figuring out and solving it because I can feel good about myself for doing it in 6 hours, but I don't enjoy the process of it. No, I would rather like make the best thing I can.
Sick.
Yeah.
I like the way you describe that, just the benchmark, like chasing a benchmark. With that said, benchmarks are always shifting.
Yeah, they are.
So is that why that truck's taken 3 years? Because the benchmark keeps shifting, or is it not meeting your standards? So that truck is that still aiming or achieving the original benchmark you set, or is that bench,
Yeah, no. The truck has stood the test of time. So I think it is one of the most successful designs I've made. I've looked at it for 3 years, and every time I look at it, I'm like, damn. But like, so what it was in the beginning, my eye was a certain level, like visual eyes a certain level, your skill level is a certain level. And what happened is my eye and modeling skill kind of grew with the truck as I've gone through the 3 years. So I've uploaded other projects in the background that have taken learnings from the truck, but the truck is itself its own object that's just never finished, unfortunately. Now I'm just trying to finish it. I'm not bothered about trying to push it because, like I said, Pareto principle, it's done. Like the 20% is in there. Just get the rest of it done and render it. But yeah, I would say that like you can chase an endless tail benchmark wise sometimes, but the truck is not that. I do think the truck is past it, and so it's just about getting it out. Yeah, pretty much.
Sick. So I guess that truck's like a mothership kind of thing then.
Yes.
Like it's kind of feeding all the other projects.
It's feeding a lot. It's fed a lot of the wins I've had. It's just in the background feeding them. Yeah. Yeah.
What is left to finish? You said you need to finish it?
So I've been working on the interior recently. And there's just stuff like there's like the door. It doesn't have a door handle still, even though the rest is fleshed out. There's certain like stupid things I do. And there's a bit under the door, and then it just needs like suspension and then sub-D'ing on the out surfacing and then render. It's close. It is close. It's like 85% there. It's just there's too many other things going on. And also, there's psychologically, it's been a big psychological issue of like, it feels like a mountain. You've put so much into it, and like when something gets that big, you almost don't want to start it. Does that make sense? And obviously, the answer is, just do 5 minutes a day, right? Like we know what the answer is, but psychologically, there's still sometimes a wall.
Yes.
And yeah, that's what that truck has been, to be honest. But like I have worked on it recently, so I'm gonna push it across the line, especially now. Yeah.
Have you ever gotten to the point or have any tales where you've overdone a design? So you overdone the benchmark as in like, okay, or maybe a better question to ask is you've tried to achieve a benchmark, but then things just go out of hand or get out of hand.
Honestly, not too often. There's one, I've done like a hot rod, and I think at some points I look at it and I'm like, it was a bit better before. So you can overcook. But that's the only projects I think I've overcooked on. The truck was always improved. Interestingly, like it was always improved. I think that's also because, so my suspicion is people who tend to overcook their work, or they go like, oh, it looked better before, or they do like tons of iterations. I think a lot of that can come from possibly unintentional design, right? So if you're someone who kind of just does art in a way where you're just like, oh, I feel like this, and then the next day you go, oh, I feel like this, and then the next day you go, do you know what I mean? I imagine that eventually you're probably gonna mess up things, things up, right? Was with the way I approach the project, it is very calculated. So by the time I've made the change, there was a lot of maths behind it, if that makes sense. And that maths stands the test of time in most cases. The hot rod was the only time it didn't so far. Yeah.
So going back to a little bit we were talking about before, I guess that explains why the industry or learning curriculums, whatever, have that rigid process. Like, oh, you got a sketch because that kind of locks the parameters in, then you got to go build it, and then we deliver it. Yeah. And then obviously if it's good or not, then we'll deal with it afterwards, but at least that's a process.
Yes.
So how do you ensure that, and without giving obviously your IP and your process,
Okay.
but like, how do you ensure that when you are designing, and especially in 3D, that those parameters, maybe it's not even parameters, maybe something else, but like those things are locked in and you're not overcooking things and you're not changing things. So you definitely like traversing, you're heading towards your goal, and every step you make is a step forward as opposed to sideways and even backwards sometimes.
Okay, so one big thing I do, and it's something that I'm trying to get people in the mentorship as well to get used to doing, is like, I think everything should be function based from the beginning, right? You should understand what is the thing doing, who's it for, and all of these things. I think most of the changes that come later come from not knowing those things like as much as you should, right? So even like color choice, right? Or you know, I want this shape here, I want this shape there. If you're just going on vibes, your vibe's going to change with the day. Your vibe's going to change with your emotional aspects. Your vibe's going to change, you know, if more information comes in, right? Like if someone, you know, asks you for something or redirects you. Whereas I think if you have like a strong core, I guess, foundation as to why you're doing what you're doing. So it's a riot track. It's built to intimidate. It's inspired by brutalism architecture. It's, do you know what I mean? If you have like a step, which is kind of like the Learn Squared, you know, the, what do you have it? You know, in the courses, you have the
brief builder?
The brief builder, yeah. Yeah,
yes,
kind of like the brief builder, right? It's like, if you have those locked in, but to like another degree, so you have more, not just like the word, but what does that actually mean to you? And also if you have strong references that you are looking at and looking between, is harder to get lost. Do you see what I mean? Because you have these signposts all over on your journey, right? That's what being lost is. You don't know where the next signpost is, or you can't see it anymore, right? And then you kind of wander off and then you drift. And so that was something I had to learn on that truck, because it changed easily about 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. The face kept changing. And I was like, okay, what face do I do? I can do all of these shapes. Like, why would I not do another shape? And a new car comes out and I go, that's cool. I want that. Do you see what I mean? And that's why you need to keep in and just go, nope, another project. And I have a bad habit of starting multiple projects. So I will start that project on that day. I'll be like, okay, fuck the track. I'm going to, sorry, forget the track.
So good, so
I'm going to go, you know, I'm going to go do another project, and get that cool thing, but I won't do it to the truck. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So that stays on its road, and then I take another road.
Sick.
And then, sure, I don't release all the projects, and there's unfinished work, and that's a bad habit. But it at least means I don't destroy what I was already started. Do you see what I mean? Yeah.
Fully. I personally love that approach. And it's almost like when you, and correct me if it's not the same case for yourself, but like you said, you got the truck or you got this particular project and you have everything, at least in terms of what you want it to achieve, locked in. And the goal is locked in. And then you go ahead and do it. But then, like you said, there's something that comes up that's an opportunity.
Yeah.
You can shoehorn it into things, but then when you're shoehorning into things, it doesn't help the goal.
Yeah.
So then you kind of start another one and so on and so forth. So I think that's really cool that you preserve what that is and you can recognize it and then keep going forward and do other stuff. And do many things at the same time as well. But does that mess you up that you got so many things that are unfinished and you keep doing things along? Or is that your way of processing, I guess, all that input that's coming in and trying to resolve it?
Yes. So it's both. So one, it is its own issue. Because you can get a lot of projects up to like 70% complete. I've got the missile I started on the Learn Squared that you've seen, right? That's more finished than the truck, but it's not posted yet, right? You can see what happens. You start diverging. Now, it's not bad in the way of like, the reason why I do that, or even the reason why I have the missile and then I have the lander, is because I realized instead of starting a new project, I can do 2 projects at once that feed into one project. It's the same thing, but it's kind of like, it's shared. And if you notice, like, the missile has like Formula 1 kind of references in its design, but the top lander has like aircraft, kind of like big aircraft forms in it. And that's a way of me processing both F1 forms and aircraft forms at once. And then what happens is I'll work on the missile, and when my brain gets tired of that, I will then switch to the lander. And then I go like this, and then I'm able to improve in both directions at once on one project, if that makes sense. It's a bit weird, but this is just the way I am.
It makes sense. And F1 forms and aircraft forms is, to me, the perfect cocktail.
Exactly.
You just always use so many cool results. So then, considering that you thrive on efficiency and nailing it as well, how do you process and deal with or come to terms with unfinished projects and so many cool things cooking at once?
So the unfinished projects thing is, so part of it is like I do like having projects that are kept back so that I can release them when I need them. Like for example, like I said, I'm looking for work now. Instead of it being like, oh my god, I need to build a portfolio, it's like, no, oh my god, I have 5 models I haven't posted, so I have to finish them. But
Yes,
I have work. I have tons of work, right? In fact, most of my show reel is unposted portfolio work, if you think about it, right? Because it's the bleeding edge, and it's kind of that. It's just not released yet. But what it means is that it is there. In a way, it's inefficient because it's not public, right? And it's inefficient because I haven't finished it. So there's like a slow startup to getting it out. I have to go back. I have to go, okay, what was I doing? And then I have to open, do you know what I mean? Especially if I've not worked on it for a long time. So yeah, there's definitely inefficiency there, and I should stick to one project at a time. I know this, like, do you know what I mean? There are things but yet haven't practiced, as well as you can. And it's just one of those things for sure.
So is that your conclusion? Like, it's just, that you should do one project at a time, or have you explored like even finding a way to do multiple things? Not obviously clearly all finish it at once, but like you said, like have them so they're almost, I guess, like catering for like 1,000 people in one go. Like all the stoves are run, everything's ready to go, and then when it needs to go, plate them up and send them out.
Plate them up. I mean, it's interesting. I've not thought about it. I think I've been told externally, finish your projects more. So I've kind of internalized that. Right. That's not my own conclusion. Right. Noex is good at that. Finish your projects. You won't got too many projects. Right. And he's right. He's right. And also the way I do it is its own way. And I've never questioned whether my way is actually a functional way, or maybe that's just okay. Do you see what I mean? I've never delved into it. I've kind of just heard voices in the background and kind of just thought of it that way. Yeah, it's an interesting point. Some self-reflection is needed.
True. I mean, do you give yourself time to do that? And even when you do you, is that something that you relish? Or even some people would don't want to have that kind of conversation. Like, oh shit, I have to kind of like look at myself, look in the mirror and address things.
I do it all the
time.
Kind
of stuff.
Constantly.
Right,
too much,
right.
Arguably. I think I don't act enough. I self-reflect too much. I build too many huge mood boards. I build too many plans to how things should be working. I'm always trying to optimize, but that in itself takes time that I could be using to do the thing. Do you know what I mean? It's, and I'm not going to say it's procrastination, because I do get to answers. And those answers, so how I see it is that, it's kind of like, if you can figure out the most optimal way and you can leverage things correctly, then all of that kind of inefficiency in the beginning will be made up for later on. So a practical example is like, if I try and walk to your house, oops, I hit the mic, but if I try and walk to your house from here, right, I can start now. Or I can go, okay, the car company that I need to rent from isn't open for the next 2 hours. I'll wait 2 hours, get in the car, and I will overtake myself. Right? I will just drive straight past me. Because though you started early, and though walking is hard work, right? At the end of the day, the leverage is just too low, and a car engine is way too good, right? It's way too good in efficiency, and a car engine takes time to build. So it takes time to build a system which can be of a higher leverage, but that's how humans got here, right? We're leveraging technology, so I don't have to sit next to you, right? I can just use the camera, we can use technology, and now this can be streamed, right? And so what it is when it comes to art, there's loads of ways of becoming more efficient. Some of it's using new software. Some of it is switching to Blender. You don't have to you can pick and choose which efficiency you're going for. But with the way I approach projects, I do a lot of planning. So it's a slower startup. And then the block-out phase is very fast because my planning helped that. So I don't have to do 10 iterations. I don't know what I'm doing. Where's this going? Oh, I need something unique. Everything I do almost first time is unique, without a doubt. Like, it's just one of the aspects of the references I go from plus my own internal design library. It's like whatever I create will be unique. So I don't have to worry about those aspects. But the startup time is a bit slow. Do you see what I mean? So there's different ways a machine can work. And, it's kind of that. I'm always trying to figure out, like, what's the way to make the big leveraged move so that I don't have to do too much of this, if that makes sense. And by the way, what sparked this, like when I felt it, was when I went from CIG to Splitgate, right? Like even that jump, my salary doubled from CIG to Splitgate. It doubled overnight, right? And I started Splitgate on the 17th of January, which is over halfway through the month. I reached the end of the month and the paycheck was as big as an entire month for Star Citizens. And in that moment, I was like, so what? 17 days of me working 8 hours a day is not the answer to, do you know what I mean? Because we do a thing of like, oh, I need to work hard so that I can get this thing, right? You do, oh, I'm going to do this and then this will give me this. This is the input. I click on Maya and then the output is I get the job kind of thing. And in the middle, there's this box and I call this box life. And this life thing is like a leverage multiplier or decreaser. And it's just got a number in it, just like in school, where they'd go, 1 + 1 is in the box, and then what comes out 2, right? The problem is, in general, artists, and me included, but I'm way better at it now, we assume the box is just kind of this like see-through passageway of I'm not going to say glass, because glass does have a refraction index, but we assume that like whatever you put in is just going to come out the other end, and it's no, that's not how it works at all. And so because of that, I don't mind spending 4 hours making a mood board to go, what am I doing with my life? Because I use mood boards to like plan my entire life, right? What am I doing with my life from the top? What are the best high leverage things I can do? And maybe it's not finishing this project. Even though maybe it sounds from the outside like finish the project and post it. Like maybe from up here, from executive level or where the CEO sees it, they're like, nah, this is irrelevant. Do you see what I mean? So I think we need to think a bit more like that, especially because the higher ups in companies are thinking like that. Yeah.
So it sounds like no, that's sick. That's sick. Very eye-opening as well. So your mood boards are your sketches. Like that's how you plan, but if it's not just like on a design aspect, it's like a life aspect as well.
Yeah.
So how committed are you to the planning stage? Like how much of is that the most important aspect to anything that you do?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm very committed to planning stage. I think when I was in university, a lot of my projects were just on vibes. I was just like, I want to make a cool thing. I want to make a cool thing. I want to make a cool thing. But now more than ever, every project I make has to fulfill a purpose. And so like the truck was about designing a four-wheeled vehicle that was grounded. Right, that's its job. Because currently, if you look at my portfolio, I don't have any four-wheeled vehicles that are grounded and of my design. I have Nakamoto's, which is someone else's design that I did for like an NFT project that never went anywhere. And then I have the motorbikes. I have spaceships. I don't have a grounded. Right, so that's what the truck's job was. And then I've got like a hot rod. The job with that is an exposed engine so that I can make a kit bash of an engine parts. Right, so everything has a job and everything has a function. And if I go to like, well, why does it need to be grounded? Well, I go because most game companies need grounded vehicles, not crazy vehicles. And Cyberpunk exists, but only hires one vehicle artist. And then this board will be huge and it's gigabytes. And it's just like, do you know what I mean? And by the end of it, it's like, okay, I need to make this project to fulfill all of these things at once. A lot of that is what's on ArtStation, what's not on ArtStation, what is the industry missing, what kind of gap in the market can I fill? How do I not compete with people who I already know are crazy at a certain thing, right? So if you look at my portfolio, there's no mechs, there's no guns. I'm a hard surface person with no mechs and no guns for a reason. That's not by accident. I can make a mech, I can make a gun, right? But what's the point if I know until like I know I can do something new? Now, arguably, maybe there is a Batman Beyond mech on my hard drive somewhere, but the point is like it's very different to anything you've seen before because it has to be, right? And it took me planning to hit like, okay, if I want to make a Batmobile in the future, I should probably make a fan art IP based upon this, and then that's where the Bat Cloud, the big Bat one came from, and that's where do you see what I mean? And so it all feeds in. I'm very particular with what I do and why, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned that wasn't the case at uni. So where did this come from? Or was it always kind of like lurking and it just kind of exploded?
Yeah, it was lurking, but as I've grown, I've just learnt more about everything, right? I've learnt more. A lot of the way I look at like art is through kind of a lens of economics now. So I've learned a lot about, and I don't know like a lot about economics, but I've learned a lot about how the flow of value works, right? And sometimes that value is financial currency value, sometimes that value is values, like concept art values. And I think that's why we call them values, because it is that, it's all communication, right? And it's all a exchange of values. Some of it can be mental values, or like, oh, you and I like this same kind of color, right? So when I paint a picture in this color, it resonates with you, and then you put a like on my ArtStation, and that like then pushes me in an algorithm to show other people that I am seen as of value. Then I hit trending, then other people on trending see me there, and then they click on it, and then it generates traffic, and then they like more and more, and then eventually you're on a Learn Squared podcast. Like everything is just a stock market of visual value when it comes to art, right?
Yes.
So because of that, economics has actually become a very interesting factor in my life, especially considering I'm not an office maths person. I'm not, but there's that aspect to the way I approach things. Do you see what I mean? So it's kind of like the mix and merging. Yeah.
Sick. So is that more like a natural, I guess, progression, or like the rabbit hole that you went down, it kind of led you on this path because economics and economy is linked to efficiency, or trying to find an efficient way to achieve a goal through different things, right?
It was more just trying to find an efficient way. And I just realized, your question. So it was more towards when I was younger. I kind of like, I was shooting everywhere. I was just doing whatever. Do you know what I mean? And I remember like even Alex Seneschal, who was my mentor at the time, he'd be like, you know, you're just brave. You just do all these projects. Like, you just don't care about what people think, right? And I was kind of like shooting all directions. Robot Jaguar, then I'm doing the train, then do you know what I mean? I was just kind of like all over the place. And then, as I went through my career, so once I hit Ubisoft, I was like, okay, this is good, but now I'm here and I've got a job and I'm making some money. What do I actually want? And I always ask myself that question, like, you know, every day, every year, I'm always asking. And at that point, it was like, well, I want to work at Star Citizen. I want to do spaceships, right? And so all my work then became, okay, spaceship. And then once I went to Star Citizen, from that moment, I was actually perfectly happy, right? So that was the perfect fit. I would say Star Citizen is the best fit I've ever had, right? Then what happened was, I went for that thing, like I said, right? The salary doubled. And that was eye-opening, because that went, okay, so my mental model of how life works is not correct, right? I knew it was possible, but but until it happens to you, you don't truly understand it, right? And then I was like, okay, hang on. So it's not the work that I'm doing that makes the money. And then you start going, okay, is there something in art? And then you look at art of, like, you know, Shang Lam can do a few sketches on his sketchbook that are amazing. He posts them and it will blow up more than you with your rendered art. And I don't mean you personally, I just mean you, the viewer, like anyone with your rendered art, more than me with my 3D models, right? It'll blow up. And that's because maybe it talks to people in a way that you didn't think. Do you see what I mean? And so you go, okay, so it's not necessarily about the amount of work I put in. And so I started unraveling that kind of mental model I had there. And then with the new Splitgate job, I met more people, right? I used to go to car meets when I had the car. And I'd meet people who are like living a completely different life, right? They're like, oh, this guy owns a Lamborghini fully in Bitcoin and he's an investment banker, and everything he does is highly leveraged. Like every move he does is just maybe 10 grand, 20 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand. And you're there like, but that's a salary. And they're like, don't care. I don't care. Right. And so I started looking into economics, because I was like, I work so hard in this industry, right? And you're fighting for this, and then you see layoffs, right? And layoffs are great because, and obviously layoffs are terrible, but layoffs are great because they're supposed to awaken you to, well, you worked really hard for 3 years and then they went snap, right? And sometimes that's because the company fails. Sometimes it's just because they want, you know, higher marks on their stock sheet. And maybe the company didn't fail, maybe it succeeded, and you still got laid off. And so what is the unraveling of programming that kind of sets us in a certain pace. And then I started questioning everything. And then I realized that economics, or just like looking into certain economic laws, be it like, Price's law, there's Pareto principle, there's natural distribution, there's all of these things that are operating in the background of everything, absolutely everything that we're doing. And art can be optimized through those exact same things, because at the end of the day, we're exchanging value. So it's all maths. It is all maths. It's just we ignore the maths and kind of just go, oh, pretty picture, RGB values, it's still maths, right? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
no, it's true. Now I think, I always think, not in detail as you just explained,
fair enough,
but how can I explain it? Like, I can see or feel the waveforms in the background, or like the different kind of like oscillations or whatever. Like,
That's what it
okay,
is.
there's something that's kind of like causing all this, or at least, leading things to settle where they're settling, kind of stuff.
Yes, yeah.
And I was just going to ask, and I guess it still is the case, but that kind of thing can definitely take you away from art, away from your creativity, because you see all these different kind of things.
100%.
Has that happened to you, or has it made you double down even more?
It's taken me away a little bit. So what I would say, right? And by the way, the first time like I got hit, so the first time I stopped caring about that kind of art fame aspect of it, right? I always had my own personal goal. Like I said, Vitaly Bulgakov, right? That was always my like, oh, I want to be great, blah, blah, blah. And on the ArtStation Challenge, he was one of the judges. And, because I won the ArtStation Challenge, I thought to myself, oh, that means he must have liked my work at least a little bit, right? Like, but what it was, so when we look at things, I mean, there's loads of conversations about this, right? Like likes, follows, ego, all of that stuff, right? When we look at, those aspects, for me, it's always been like, I want specific people to like certain work, right? I don't care about the overall number. And the way I see it is like, if I have 1 million followers, but 1 million of them are students who don't have a good eye for art, I don't think that's valuable personally. Right. And so when Vitaly followed me on Instagram, in that moment, I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I did not care about, and obviously it's not just him. Don't get me wrong. There's loads of other artists, but he was one of the later ones. Most of the artists that I loved and I was like, yeah, this is an amazing artist. They had followed me before that. Right. But he was one where like that need for that kind of external validation, if you want to call it that, which is what it is, that need kind of just like simmered down and kind of passed. And then I no longer cared about that. And then what happened is on ArtStation, I released the COVID track during COVID. And that became my most liked, most viewed project ever. And I modeled that in 7 hours. So in that moment, I was like, wait, so you're telling me 7 hours of me making a joke, right? Putting a toilet tissue on this thing, 7 hours can beat everything I've tried to make before ever. Right. And that's the part of the economics aspect, which is, well, no, it was a well-timed product, right? It was COVID. It was relatable. It had humor in it. And so that's about value transactions. Someone who saw your work, instead of going, oh, wow, cool sci-fi, cool shapes, they went, COVID, tissue, truck.
Yeah,
I know what
yeah.
those are. Relatable. Like, right. Do you see what I mean? And so in that moment, I was like, okay, none of this matters. Right. This is a joke kind of thing. This is a joke. And so that was like the start of the detaching. All of this was the start of detaching from the kind of ArtStation thing. And then the economics aspects came in where it was like, okay, well, if you look at the stock market, you have to know like, what's the pool of money that's in there, right? What's the GDP of the country you're looking at? So ArtStation, who's on ArtStation? What country are they from? How many people are they? What's the gender split? There's all of these questions, and all of these questions then funnel into what gets a like and what doesn't get a like. So if you look at like, I've checked like obviously where the majority of the countries are, and the majority of the countries are obviously further out. So relatable to them is more likely to be an old car, a tank, or a gun, right? I'm coming in with McLaren forms and Bugatti forms, right? And to them, they're like, well, this isn't relatable. We don't see these cars driving around, but I'm in central London car spotting. So what's relatable to me is not relatable to them. And once I understood that if I post the project and it's authentically me, it's actually impossible for it to reach the same amount of likes and follows as if someone posts, let's say Noax, for example, he can post a tank or a truck. I think Noax is, I think his art style is the sweet spot of ArtStation. I genuinely think for vehicles and that kind of stuff, right? I think it's genuinely like the culmination of exactly what they need, right? And I love his work. I love his work too, right? So I think it's that sweet spot. And I was like, no, I'm way off here. No matter how good I do it, I'm way off here. And the Bugatti Tourbillon, the new Bugatti, basically, the show on replacement, the designer has posted his sketches and a lot of the work for that on ArtStation. No one's seen it. Doesn't matter if you're that good. No one's gonna. It's ArtStation. It's not built for. He needs to be on Behance. He's in the wrong place. It's about markets, and that's why I see the economics aspect of it is like it's important because there'll be loads of people who watch this and they might have put their ego in their art and they're like, oh, I posted this and no one liked it. right? Or I posted this and now I feel depressed because I'm not getting a job. And I'm like, bruh, who's the market on ArtStation? Like, who didn't like it? Like, you have to ask who, always. Who am I trying to, whose I was gonna say perspective, but like whose accreditation or whose accreditation, do you know what I mean? Whose opinion am I trying to appease in this, do you know what I mean? And that's what it is. You need to just ask questions as to where is everything you're valuing yourself coming from, and who are these people, and do you even care about what those people care about? Right, like, and so yeah, that's part of the you can see it, like it all trickles in.
For sure. Yeah. No, sick. That's excellently put as well. Like, yeah, that's absolutely bang on. And for sure, like, and again, even if you put stuff out there, you are not in control, even if you nail everything. For example, like, you can nail, like you said, the sweet spot. You can get the sweetest of the sweet spot inside the sweet spot, and even then it's like fully saturated and it's there.
100%. Yeah.
If there's one thing that's off, or you're and it depends on the platform as well, like whether the algorithm is or whatever else, or maybe you dropped it at the same time, a crazy world event happened, or that too, and then there's no matter what, like,
exactly,
it's all these different factors,
exactly.
But no, I think that's fascinating, especially the way you approach things, the way you look at things, like looking at things on how art is delivered and how it's consumed. Like, that is the perfect way to analyze things, because you have to look at it properly. And I can see where, I mean, I think we've all been through, like you just mentioned there as well, like, I guess that validation arc of when you're an artist, when you start putting stuff out there, it's like, oh shit, okay, is it approved? Oh, it's approved. And then it's like, oh, who's approving it? Like, you go for those different layers or the ladder of it or whatever. And like you said, like, the way you describe, like, Vitali following you, that's the same kind of thing that I experienced when I hit 30. Like, it was almost like, oh shit, 30, I have underachieved massively, and 30 is like the end of my life. And if I don't somehow in these last few months make up for this amount of time, it's going to be thing. Then 30, I'm like, shit. Oh, it's like, obviously, I was like, I think a teenager when the millennium bug thing, like when the year hit 2000, all the computers are going to shut down or whatever. Fucking nothing happened. Just carry on, whatever else. And then, so happy, that kind of reminded me of that kind of a moment. It's like, oh shit, there's still time to do stuff. Let's go and do it. Kind of stuff, and etc. But it's natural. It's natural to kind of have those insecurities, especially when it is art stuff. Like, it isn't. There's not so much personality involved and so much of yourself put on there. And again, the validation arc, go through it, make peace with it. When you make peace with it, then move on as well.
Exactly.
But at the same time, it's a case of we're putting it on these platforms that are just literal efficiency machines.
The machines.
And they're all chasing for their own efficiency. And if the trend changes, they're going to discard the old trend and go for the next one. They do not give a shit.
Exactly.
And if you start not giving a shit as well, then you're going to be in a much healthier place. That's cool. And like we said, detachment as well. I think detachment is it's a spiritual term in certain aspects as well. Like, it's a case of you put so much of yourself into this, but then you discard it and you don't care. Was that easy for you to do, and have you always done that?
Yeah, it's easy. I find it easy. I'm very clear-cut logic with things. So once something makes no logical sense, and that's what I mean, right? Like, once I get my eyes awakened to anything, I can disregard. I can just stop very, very quickly. And kind of separate. And that's kind of what it was. With, like I said, the job change. It was kind of like, okay, I'm disregarding that work equals success. I'm just disregarding that because I've just seen it doesn't, right? And so I'm always then, and that's why the boards keep changing, because I have the new mood board, and I'm like, damn, okay, I was wrong. So what's the new thing? And I'm trying to always figure it out. But yeah, it was quite easy to disregard. And that COVID truck did a very good job at me, just like, I don't care about the likes and like you said, right? You said a key point. If there's an emergency event or something, I remember, like, friends will be like, okay, I'm going to post at this time. And I remember once, I've many times people have posted and then there's an art blast, right? And instantly they just get, like buried underneath it. I do remember that when Horizon Zero Dawn did an art blast, I think it was Horizon or it was Last of Us, it's one of the two. Vitali posted at the same time. And Vitali was like by himself at the top, #1, and then everything else was art blast. And then there were people. And I was like, okay, that's incredible. Like to have that much soul power to be able to do that is incredible. But in most cases, you don't have the power to overcome such tasks, right? Like, people need to be at the computer at the time you post. They need to be on ArtStation specifically at the time you post. They need to press like and comment within a certain amount of time. Because I don't know how long it is, but I assume it's like maybe 10 to 15 minutes or something. And then the algorithm then ranks you, right? And that's just too many variables. It's too many variables. Even your icon has to be incredible, and your icon mustn't be next to a highly polarizing other icon. And there mustn't be any like big boobed women next to you, or you lose very quickly, right?
Or
So,
Tolas.
right, exactly, right? So that's the kind of level of variables you're working with, and for me that's too much, so I can't invest my heart and soul into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And then the two conclusions: you either try and catch it at the right time and then just abide by those kind of things, exactly, or you just don't care and just be like, oh shit, I've done, it's 2:00, this is the worst time to post at 2:00 in the morning, fuck it, let's get it out there and just move on to the next thing and whatever. And that's it. And there's definitely something like liberating about that kind of stuff as well, because then your goals completely change and you just focus on what you need to focus on. And
I agree.
Also, when you do these kind of things and discover these kind of things and have these, not so much breakthroughs, but I guess like new data, right? Like you find this new data set and it's like, oh shit, these are things are factors.
Yes.
Then you can make things from there as well. Going back to your mood boards.
Yeah, of course.
So, I guess when you're making something, when you design something, it's always like a conversation from the beginning to the end. Yes. But a lot of the bigger conversations happen right at the beginning, and the rest of it is just like, is this the right way? Is this the wrong way? What do I do? Etc. Etc. The conversation gets more and more sparse and fewer until you get to the end kind of thing. It sounds like with your mood board process and your research process, it's like you're having almost the conversation right at the beginning. But with that said, and you did mention like you have things listed out and written down.
Yeah.
How much of it is physical in the sense of like it's in front of you and it has to be in front of you versus stuff that's, I guess, mental notes or like mental kind of like you've reasoned with something and you've kind of like come to the conclusion that, okay, this is where I need to go.
Right.
And if that makes sense. So like, yeah, do you lean more on like a visual kind of mood board and visual kind of like points that you follow, or is it more just, again, like in a weird way, like a very concentrated vibe inside your head?
So I have terrible memory. That's a good baseline. My memory is catastrophic. So I write down notes on Google Keep, and I use Google Keep because it's in the cloud. I don't like cloud services and any stuff like that, but I do it because what it means is I can access it at any time. And that's useful because often like a mood board's only on PureRef, only on my computer, and I'm not at my computer, so that's useless, right? And so with Google Keep, I can just take out my phone, I'll write some notes. I won't put any images there. It'll just be like, so let's say I'm thinking of if I just look at, I've got some car models on my table, so I'll just be like, shadow pocket, hexagonal shape, sharp orange line, right? I'll just do that. And then what is this? I know when I read it, I'll know kind of what I was thinking at the time. And then that'll be on Google Keep. And then when I get home, if I'm not home, or when I get to the PC, I'll open the PureRef and then I will kind of like transfer over, and then everything will go into PureRef. Maybe I'll attach an image of what I had. So it's the Lamborghini Revuelto. So I'll type in Lamborghini Revuelto, take a picture of it, put it in there. And then what happens is it will be, so some of it will be visual references. Some of it will be just kind of ideas of like, okay, I've not seen this before. Like this morning, I woke up and I was like, I've not seen someone do a vehicle that's like a zipper. So it just breaks apart the ground and then it zips it back as it goes across. I've not seen that before. Now someone's going to take it. It's fine. Now I know it's mine if I see it. But like, I haven't seen an idea like that, right? So that is something I would normally write down. And then I would get references of zips, get references of maybe a speeder or a bike, get references of cars. And then what will happen is that's kind of the what. And then the how is I will kind of look across ArtStation and be like, has anyone done anything like this? What shapes are used? What shapes aren't used? What car shapes have I not done in my own work that I want to do, right? I'll put them there. So that might be just like completely unconnected. It might be car shapes. It might be a nuclear reactor shape, right? That has nothing to do with it, but I like some of the details. And then I'll have like, okay, try and get the feeling of scale based upon this thing, and then try and get the flow and the overlap of this thing, and then try and put that into there. And then that's when I'd go into block out stage. So yeah, the mood board will just be full of those kind of things. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Cool. Do you have a specific, I guess like when we were gathering references and gathering things for a project, like you mentioned words, you mentioned images, you mentioned obviously like, you know, intention, possible design routes, even things that are completely unrelated, like trying to like, you know, put them in there. I guess you could look at like in a periodic table kind of way, like all the different elements that you can pick and choose from, and some obviously like, you know, react with each other, make new things or whatever. I believe that's how it works.
Yeah.
Are there any particular elements or pillars that are always your go-to, or you always lean on the most? If that makes sense.
Yes, I have 25 actually. I've got like I've got a separate mood board that's like a checklist.
So as many lights as you use in your viewport, basically.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so I've got like and what is this? And you said pillars, and I think pillars is the key points. So I'll have them to ensure that I don't go off the trodden path. Right? It's to keep everything kind of in, and also practice certain things that I'm trying to. So what is this? Like, you need to consciously take on information and consciously practice to get it into your subconscious. And so there are things that I consciously know when I see a good design that maybe I don't know how to subconsciously put into my art. And so I'll have like, in this case, 25. So I'm trying to think of what they are. Like, one of them is like, so there'll be like negative space. And that sounds very obvious, but it's negative space in terms of like, how do I explain this? It's negative space in terms of like light, shadow, negative space, right? So if I shine a light, there's a shadow that's cast by it. And then there's also the physical negative space. And then there's the scale of what that negative space is in comparison to the whole picture, right? And because with negative space, you can tell scale very well, right? What sticks out dictates a lot of how big something is. You see that with like a pebble versus a mountain versus the earth when you zoom out, right? It's smooth, but you zoom in, it's rocky. There's a lot of like scale in negative space. And then some of it would be like pocket. So pocket is just like an overlap. If I do that, there's a shadow cast right underneath my finger, and that can look cool for vehicles. You see it with like big spoilers that cast the shadow over the diffuser and the lower part of the vehicle. And then there's like lights in pockets. So that's putting a light inside a pocket that is already casting the shadow, and that's what Star Citizen does a lot, right? So if you look at the back of like a ship, they'll have like this cool overlap. That's the negative space. Then they have a light in the pocket, and then you have animation, so the light blinks, and then as it's blinking, it casts new shadows. And you start overlapping, and by the time you've overlapped, my thought process is by the time I've overlapped all 25 of the things, it's impossible for my design to look bad. Like, it's impossible because it's been like filtered 25 times. And so whatever's at the bottom is gold, basically. Yeah.
And every time foolproof?
Yeah. It's quite infallible. If to be honest. Yeah.
Sick. So, with all that said, do you have a kryptonite? Is there any kryptonite? And even if there is, does efficiency nullify its effects?
Oh, biggest kryptonite is definitely the drawing aspect. It's just the speed. It's not even drawing. It's initial speed. It's just short. I would say short speed. So, short delivery of projects, speed.
Okay.
And then also Splitgate. A lot of my kryptonite was large environments, especially environments where I couldn't rely. So you can make an environment very interesting if you have loads of objects and props, right? But if people need to run through everywhere and everything needs to read very clearly, well, what do you put in there, right? So, because you can't put things in there because it destroys the level design. So there was a lot of kryptonite with that. I've gotten much better at it now because I did it for 3 years. But that used to be a kryptonite. Current kryptonite for sure is selling the dream. So key art is what I'm trying to currently work on. There's the Learn Squared course that came out today. I bought that yesterday, right? So that's for the key art, because I saw like the planet and I saw the bigger scale stuff, and basically any scale that's larger than a car, not a spaceship because it's still a prop, but any scale in terms of like environment art that's larger than a car, I start to run into difficulty to comprehend how to deal with something that big. I like small, concise things. I like being able to put everything into a confined space. A car's still 5 meters by about 2 meters, 3 meters, but once you start going, 30 meters, this is your environment, fill it up. It's like, I can do it. If I look at a lot of reference, I can do it. But it's a bit of a struggle. And then when I have to render or texture or do the extra stuff for that, that's where the struggle comes in. So I can make a spaceship just fine, but if you go give me a landing scene, right, then I've got to think about people, composition, lighting, and that's where like I can run into. I would say that's the closest kryptonite for sure. I can do it, but it's just not. It's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. Yeah.
But I guess that doesn't qualify as kryptonite for me. I'll explain why. Because it's just something that you haven't really put that much mileage invested in.
Right,
stuff,
that's
right?
true. That's true. Okay. Well, okay. So,
like,
how do you mean it? I'm curious.
So let's say, for example, like you got the 20,000 hours in environment as well.
Yeah.
And even then, after that, you're still having those difficulties. It's like, okay, cool. That's my kryptonite.
That's just a kryptonite.
So for example, my kryptonite is literally what's your superpower, is the planning side of thing. When I try and do it,
yeah,
my brain just constantly wants to just like whatever, like unraveling DNA is like reverse. It constantly wants to mess it up, glitch it all up, and all that kind of stuff, and just go in abstract places. So I've just avoided it,
right?
And I've tried so many times. So I guess again in that case, then that's what I'm kind of getting at, I guess.
In that case, something I've done for a long time, but.
If anything. It doesn't have to be anything either.
I'm trying to think. Do you know what? Honestly, the only two that come to mind is finishing projects.
Okay, fair enough.
I finish sometimes, but that's something that's reoccurring. I guess that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
And the other side I would just say is the drawing aspect. I do genuinely think there's a mental block there. And the reason why I say that is because I've been drawing since I was a young child. I did art all throughout my life. It's not like I just started. I've done art for a very long time. But it's not like my art skill in drawing increased. Like 3D was exponential to me. Within 3 years, I was industry ready. Drawing, I was doing for 15, 14 years before that. Sure, a lot of it is unoptimal. You're a child. You don't know that Scott Robinson's book even exists at a certain age, or maybe it wasn't even out by that point. I'm not sure. When I was that young, but. That's always had I've always had a mental block, and like I said, my memory is really bad, and I don't have a very good mental image. So when it comes to a design, I don't see my design in my head. I have to start from the mood board, and then I have to build a block out. So I have to put a cube in, and then I have to go, that's wrong, and then I just do that 20,000 times. Like AI, let's be honest. Like AI, I literally say this cube's wrong, look back at the reference, I fix it, and now I've got an internal library, so I can look back at my internal library, mix it with the reference, fix. So when you give me a blank canvas, I'm like, I don't know what this car looks like. Do you know what I mean? It's I haven't done the 10,000 or however many thousand iterations yet, and I would say that's something I don't. I might be able to overcome it, but it doesn't feel like it so far. Do you know what I mean?
Interesting.
So, maybe that's it. Yeah.
What about inspirations? So taking away, and maybe it's not even possible, like when you're creative, like you can't separate the inspiration and what you enjoy and your art, like it kind of like it's like an umbilical cord that's kind of like permanently soldered into each other. But let's assume, is that the case for you, or are you able to separate, and what kind of things inspire you and even like help you switch off from art as well?
Oh, okay. So is this as in can I do art without inspiration necessarily?
Nah, just like what fuels you as a person, what inspires you?
What inspires me? Okay. That's a good question, isn't it? I mean, yeah, so obviously there's the obvious things within art, movies, films, games, whatever. Outside of art, I would say like there's vehicle design. That's a huge thing. I would say that takes up a good amount. I do like all vehicles, so trains, transport, that's something. I look out the sky, I look out the window a lot at birds fly. I have an obsession. I wanted to be a pilot when I was younger. So I do have an obsession with the way they fly, the grace in which they do it. The idea of having wings that fold back and then you've got legs to walk on. There's a lot of elegance in the way they are. So that's a nod to nature. I'm not inspired by all of nature. I'm inspired by very specific parts of it, if I'm honest, right? I do now look at everything. So bins, the plastic molding on a bin. I can now look at everything and not just like, oh, what's the prettiest supercar? I can look across the board now. Yeah. That was developed though. Before I was just like, I just like pretty things, right? And I still do, but now I'm more likely to just look at things for everything, shape contrast as I look at a camera with the lens, right? The size contrast. There's a lot of these levels of contrast. And the reason why I even began looking into those kind of things is because, like I said earlier, right, if you have a target market that isn't of your same interest, like, value system, to be a good designer, you need to be able to tap into other markets. And so you need to understand what, like, culturally another culture kind of values, and visually what do they value, what are they around. And then if they like that, I have to go, okay, why do you like that? Right? Like, why do you find this dustbin truck interesting? Right? If you like dustbin trucks, for example. And then what happened is, once I went through like creating that checklist and I've learned more, and then I look at like economics, everything becomes interesting because there's multiple layers. Oh, the dustbin truck is shaped like this because it's economically viable and good for mass production. Right? Instead of looking at a Ferrari for being beautiful, for it having good sensual forms, right? So there's different versions of beauty. And then there's, oh, it's dirty, but how is it dirty? And then there's storytelling. Someone went in the dust and put a smiley face. And that in itself is beautiful, right? So there's different forms of it. And now I can get inspiration from everything. But that was a learned thing. That was not initial. Before it was just
of course,
pretty.
Yeah.
Nice, pretty. So,
have you had any conversation with anybody or met anybody who hasn't learned that? Like, I guess that's one of the things that you have to kind of like observe and learn, right? Like, you cannot just, unless, and even if you can automatically get it, unless someone has a conversation with you about it and you start decoding it, you don't even know you're doing it, kind of thing, I guess. Like, it's one of those things, like, to analyze and to really like figure things out, or want to figure things out, and even catalog it as well. Like, that has to be something that you have to nurture to, right?
Right. Well, see, this is interesting. I don't think I've even had the conversation on this. I think what I grew up seeing loads of people do studies, right? So loads of people do art studies, and they paint often a variation of things. I always find that interesting because I don't do studies in general. And if I was to do studies, it would have always been of the same thing. So it was always like, oh, okay, this person is painting a picture, and then this next one is like a landscape, and then this next one. And I think a lot of concept artists, Alex, my friend Alex, Seneschal, that he talks a lot about like, oh, this concept artist has amazing range, right? The idea of like, they've drawn a lot of things and they know how to draw a lot of things. Kim Jong-ji, for example, who can draw everything on the planet, right? It's kind of like, I think those people, because of that exercise, they learn it that way. For me, it was more, I saw it from like, how do I ensure I can get my art seen by other people? So I saw it more of an employability aspect, and then that fed back in, if that makes sense. That's where mine began from. But when it comes to speaking to other people about it, I haven't so far. And I would argue that most people I speak to have a more broad, what's the word? A more broad library than I do, actually. I have a very deep library. I know what almost every car looks like, but I don't have, like, I've never modeled a bird, or, do you see what I mean? Or, so I'm lacking like that kind of width, but yeah, it's that really.
Is there any kind of like subject matter or realm that you've got your eye on, but you haven't really dived into yet?
Yeah. Characters on my mind, which is like a stark contrast. I've also seen that like a lot of companies want concept art and they put character in there. They go character, props, environment, vehicles. I'm like, what do you mean you want everything? Right. But, character for sure, because I know what visually makes a character very good. I can critique a character just fine. I just can't make it. But I know visually what's happening, proportion, color, clothing. I know it from a design perspective. So I know if I learnt the doing part, the design would be fine from the get-go. Does that make sense? And so I'm curious around character. I feel like I've done most other things. I've not done like, Houdini VFX. I have a love for it visually, but I've seen the process and like, I don't want to do that. I don't want nodes. I don't want to deal with cards. I don't want to deal with that. But I love watching it. I love looking at it. Yeah.
So, based on obviously your philosophy, the way you create, the things that you consider how things should be done, and the correct way as well, what kind of, I guess, IPs that you've enjoyed and experienced that align with you?
Cyberpunk, number one, for sure. I think that would have been the best projects ever to work on. That like
Sick.
to me, that's the epitome. I'd argue Cyberpunk's the epitome of it's that mixture of like sci-fi, but things are integrated, right? So it's not just like, oh, here's a sci-fi corridor. It's like, no, it's a whole world. It's all designs, right? So it's not like, because I saw Mind's Eye recently, right? Mind's Eye is like 80% real, 20% a bit futuristic, and most of it is like kind of California Tesla vibe, right? Whereas Cyberpunk is full blown, like, no, we're just going for it. You know, this person doesn't even have eyes, right? Like, they've got this implant, and it's kind of that far out aspect. I think for me, like, that's kind of the perfect sweet spot, especially the vehicle aspects where they're uniquely designed vehicles, but they're still grounded as in it's futuristic, but it still works. Do you know what I mean? You know, there were cars that do look like that even in the real life now, right? But it's like that sweet spot. I think that definitely would have been a sick project to work on. Design wise, Death Stranding, I love it. Death Stranding 2, Death Stranding 1. Really good design, but the actual project as a whole, I don't know whether that would be like the perfect IP fit, if that makes sense. Star Citizen, that is a dream for sure. I worked there, sure, but I watch it. Like I still stay up to date. Do you know what I mean? That Star Citizen is the sweet spot. Like regardless of whether I've worked there all the time, that will always be kind of the thing. I would argue those are the main IPs. I am sci-fi heavy in that way. I like driving games, but working on them is different to playing them, so it's a bit trickier with that. And then I've only just now, so I've been playing a bit of Avowed, and I watched a lot of like God of War, like the process and creating of God of War, and so that's slowly pushed me into fantasy a little bit. But I've never delved into fantasy, so maybe I'd like it if I was playing it for hours, but I just haven't. You see what I mean? Yeah.
Sick. Sadly, last few questions before we wrap up. But before we get into those, we didn't actually talk about industry.
Oh, yeah.
And we touched upon like being laid off a little bit as well.
Yeah.
But so is this your first time experiencing, I guess, a dip, or we could call it in your career?
Yeah.
How have you taken to that? What's it made you think about your career and what to do forward? Like in some instances, it can really basically like, you know, light a fire underneath you and make you like be like, okay, flourish even more than you never thought you could,
right,
in terms of like things that you could do or couldn't do.
Yeah.
In some cases, for some people, it can lead to, you know, downward spiral.
Yeah.
How has it been for yourself, and how long? Like, talk me for the timeline of like that whole process and what it's been like.
So I've been in the industry for 7 years straight. There was no gaps in there. It was just job. Or job. There were only 3, but it was a very fortunate kind of experience, right? I haven't gone through this before, so there were multiple issues with this actually. One, and obviously, sorry, the layoff, by the way, was so 20th of June, I think. 20th of June, so about a month ago. So there's multiple issues with the way I see it in general. I would say one is that the timing and the way my portfolio is, I think makes it harder to hire me. So I've always said like the higher you go, the less air there is to breathe. And what it is my portfolio looks senior in weight, but I can't do everything that is expected of a senior necessarily.
Okay.
Right? And a mid-level position, because the problem is with senior, lead, and principal, these kind of aspects. Principal, obviously, is the expectation that you can just do everything all the time, right? You basically need no help and you help others. Senior is like, you are well-versed. You know what you're doing most of the time. And so unless you hire me for exactly what I'm used to doing, well, like Splitgate or Star Citizen, I'm probably not actually senior in those things. If you start asking me to do a character, I'm definitely not senior, right? like from where, right? Where would I get that? So that's tricky because you realize how niche you are, right? But the reason why I became niche was to have the 7 years I just had. Because if I wasn't niche, I wouldn't have had that, right? So can you see what I mean? It's like, it's a double-edged sword. And I would say that makes it a lot harder. The saturation in the market makes it a lot harder. And obviously, I'm coming from the economical side. So anytime I see 9,000 people have been laid off and 500 are from Microsoft, I go, well, I know what that's doing to the stock market, right? Like, but not the stock market to us stock market, right? I know that now I have to compete with some senior person who's been working 12 years, who's amazing and works on Halo, the original, right? Like, like, do you see what I mean? So it's, there's that aspect that I don't really like. And when I'm looking at job applications, like you said, you see the form and you go, I can do these things, but I can't do that one thing. And now I'm just like, well, I just apply anyways for them to say no, not for you to say no to yourself. But yeah, I would say that that part of it is quite hard. Whether it's lit up a fire or not, I would say probably not. And the reason why it hasn't lit up a fire is because, and I don't think we even talked about this, but my fire is lit by long-term goals seeming achievable, right? So, for example, you know, I'm obsessed with the Audi R8. My fire, all the way from 19 to 28, was lit up by that car, right? The decisions I made, the companies I applied to, was all funded by that car, right? I left Sweden because I knew their taxes were too high and their Audi R8s were too expensive, right? Like, do you see what I mean? So everything was motivated by that. Obviously once I got it, that motivation drops, right? You go, okay, well, you've done it. So that kind of comes off. And then you have to find the next thing, right? To kind of motivate you. And I don't have a next thing that has captivated me in the same way that design. And by the way, it wasn't the Audi R8 that motivated me. It was iRobot, the Audi RSQ, which was a concept that looks like it. And I was 9 years old, right? And, you know, if you put something inspiring into a 9-year-old at that age, which is an Audi, like, you know, that's enough power to push you a long way. But now I've kind of gone through the whole arc. Like you said, I'm 30, right? So I'm 30 and I've lost my job and the car's gone. So I'm having this kind of like end of arc thing where I'm like, what the hell is all of this? 1, 2, I've worked extremely hard for the last 10 years. So I'm kind of like, what, I'm supposed to do another 10 years? And with the chance that I end up back here just getting laid off and then AI is around the corner and I'm like, this isn't even AI yet. Like when this happens, there's going to be even more. So yeah, I'm not motivated in that way. I wouldn't say I'm motivated for the industry as a whole. Obviously, like I said, I'm going to release a YouTube video. It's literally on my channel right now. So that's done now. And it's not uploaded, but it's done.
Sick.
So I think by the time, like you said, by the time it's up, it'll probably be posted for sure. And that's one avenue, right? That's an avenue for sure of like, okay, let me try something just new. Like, what is something where I think the end result is inspiring? Do you know what I mean? If, you know, before it was like, oh, I'm going to work at Blizzard, or I'm going to, not my dreams, but most people's dreams, like, I'm going to work at Riot. And now we know that, well, if you're at Blizzard, you might get bought out and then you might get fired. That's the end goal. Like, that's your end goal, is you might just be fired, right? Or you might just be in this chaos. So the games industry doesn't give me enough comfort. I'll be honest. It doesn't give me enough comfort for it. I do think that all levels of sustainable future are probably outside of it, unless I work like a workaholic again. Right, if I just continue doing this until I die, maybe you can stay at the top 1% like Daniel Simon does, where you're 50 years old and you're still relevant. But there's only one Daniel Simon for a reason. Like, most of these things are not long, don't have that much longevity. And there's too many students and 18-year-olds learning Blender, 14-year-olds learning Blender who are crazy, who will take a salary that's 1/10 of yours. There's just too much. There's just too much. So that's my kind of honest opinion. not the greatest inspiring thing, but
no, I think it's definitely insightful, and you definitely nailed, I think, almost every element there is to that and what's going on. Like there is, and I guess you could call it copium, where it's like, no, things are going to be fine, I'm talented and it's going to be fine, and definitely have that, don't ever get rid of that, but you have to counterbalance it with what's in front of you. Like there's no point in trying to put out a fire with a watering can, for example. So either step away from the fire so you don't get burnt, or get a hose, or make sure it's connected to a thingy, and then all that kind of stuff.
I agree.
So with that said, and like we mentioned before, about it's something that I all the time, but it's something that fascinates me, and it actually gives me comfort. Like when you're creative, there is no, well, you dictate when the retirement is. Like you can do it until literally life retires you, so to speak.
Exactly.
But you mentioned obviously, like, you know, what's it going to look like from you when I'm 40, 50, etc., and so on. So looking maybe not obviously overall, but like you can look at it in stages or in one go. What does the future hold for you, and what would you like it to hold for you? I know you just mentioned that obviously you're looking for the next goal now, so that's obviously one of the things that does motivate you. But do you have like a kind of like a picture of how you want things to be?
Yeah. Um. So I know for one, I know for one that we can't work forever, and I think like though the 7 years was good, it's a lot of work. When I look back, I'm like, damn. And I have a lot of like unposted work. There's a lot of work that's NDA. There's a lot of work. When I look at it, I'm like, what am I doing? To an extent, what am I doing? And I had like a tough conversation with Alex, Seneschal again, in a meet, and he kind of went over my portfolio, and he was just like, this needs improving, this needs improving, this moving. It was like a mini roast, but I remember, and it's not to bad, I love Alex, but like it hit me, and I was like, with the amount of work I've done, to hear that and be like, I've got so much more to do, and then to hear that that's just for me to have a chance at getting like a contract that might last 2 months for them to fire me again. I felt like, okay, for one, I don't think even the industry treadmill is something I want to be doing in the future. So to answer your question specifically, one aspect is I definitely want to be something in an industry that's way better leveraged. I definitely want my own thing, right? So that can be a YouTube, that can be I've got some like ideas of like even just like selling things on marketplaces, right? It can be models, kit bashes, can be all kinds of things. I have the mentorship because teaching is actually quite fun, right? And it makes me have to kind of go over the information I have and actually really test it. And then I have to translate that to someone who's not me, and then I have to see whether it works. And you know what I mean? There's a lot of like learnings over there. So I would say like I would see myself probably mentoring, teaching to an aspect. Selling things individually, like just on my own, instead of having a boss necessarily to be like dictating my limitations financially, especially because I've seen the economic side. I can't look past that now, kind of. So, I think it's that, like, everyone says freedom, and freedom is tricky. The better word is escape velocity. And that's obviously the speed at which your, like, your investments and income can outrun your outgoings. And obviously the reason why they use that instead of freedom is because there's actual number for that, so you can do the maths and figure out exactly how much that is based upon your outgoings. I think that's definitely like my biggest goal, and it's just creating machines. Like it's just, like I said, leverage, right? We make cars to travel. It's creating machines to do that. If that's through mentoring, if that's through YouTube, if that's through streaming, if that's through, I don't mind. But definitely I'm currently just trying to figure out different pathways for that. And then that can allow me to have free time where I don't need to work for you. And then I can use that free time and I can build stuff like, design IPs, because I still want to design. I'm still a designer, but it's just about free time. It's just not, oh, I have to do this. I don't like that. I have to do this. I can't do this because I have to do this. And that's obviously very idealistic, but it's like I've worked this much and I've achieved what I've achieved and I'm happy about it. I can try again. I can try again. That's a worthy end goal to me. It's a worthy end goal. That's how I'd put it. Yeah.
Sick. Last question before we head off. Simple one. Any final thoughts or words from yourself to the listeners?
Oh, that's a good one. Final thoughts. I would say, and the reason this comes from like me having mentoring people now, but like the biggest thing I would say is I think it's important to look at what you're trying to do, big picture, kind of like the question you just asked, and then draw everything down from then, right? I think it's good to start big and then go to small, but I also think it's important to learn, how life tends to work, what the underlying systems of life are. I think a lot of artists are relatively naive, and I think obviously we need naivety to think you can even get a career doing this, and then you have to put in so much work and you have to pull it off. So there's a lot of naivety, right? You're going against something that's mathematically unlikely, and then if you pull it off, you actually pulled it off. So you actually achieved it, but that can also make you more naive. And so you need to be able to like see what the real world is doing, right? And in our case, we're getting a big wake-up call. The industry's getting a big wake-up call. They're seeing the way investors work. They're seeing the way companies work. They're seeing the way balance sheets work, right? They're seeing that this upper line means that your panel lines and your ability to draw a skull that's anatomically correct is irrelevant, right? Splitgate was great because, well, terrible. It's not a great thing. It's kind of terrible, but Splitgate 2 in particular, it showed me that even though we did tons of great art, right, that's not what actually holds the game. Right. And if marketing makes one mistake, or if like a camera angle is facing one wrong thing, or someone's frigging the color of something is the wrong thing, all your work gets destroyed very quickly, right? It teaches you the hierarchy of importance. And I would say in your life, it's good to understand what is hierarchically most important. And for me, I'm trying to optimize that in the day, right? So today, this interview is hierarchically the most important thing. Just objectively, there's no competition, right? And then after this, there might be something else. Maybe I need to send my phone off, and then everything else, noise. Everything else is noise, right? And that's where procrastination comes from. You can't see in the noise what's important, and then you end up not doing things, right? So in general, like, always try and find the most important thing, whether is that applying to a new job? Is that working on your portfolio? What part of your portfolio? And that's for yourself. And then also do that for the world, right? What is the most important thing they're hiring for? Where's the majority of people on ArtStation? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's both. Look at hierarchies, and then you can make good decisions. That's the best way I can put it. It's obviously a bit complicated and hard to put into words, but yeah.
Excellent. Let everybody know where they can find you, find your stuff, and also take your mentorship.
Yeah. So I do have a Discord. Hopefully I can put in a link or something, and I'll message
Sure, let me know.
So I've got a Discord.
Send it to me, we'll add in there.
And the Discord is not even a mentorship. That's just a place people can chill. There's 150 people in there. And they, like that, you can just enter, you can talk, it's whatever. Send your art, you can send work in progress, you can get critique. And then the mentorship is like a level underneath that, where it's like, if you're interested, and obviously that's paid, then you can talk to me about it, and then we just one-on-one, and I talk to people about it. However, like, when I get time, I will obviously give feedback in the Discord for free. It's not like, oh my God, I'm not saying this, because like I try and give a lot of value in that. That's what my YouTube channel will be as well. So the YouTube, you can find me, rmlambert95. So if you type that into YouTube, Google, you'll find everything. You'll find probably even my Instagram. I think it's everything. So Instagram, ArtStation, YouTube, and the Discord is more of a link, so there's no direct connection, but it's also at the end of my show reel. I think I've put it in the bio. So yeah, those are the main places, and by the time this is up, I love YouTube videos, so that's good as well.
Sick. Rene, it's been absolutely amazing. Thanks so much for jumping on.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Take care.
Sick. Huge thanks to Rene for that inspirational conversation. Hit the links to give him a follow and to check out all that he's got going on to help his fellow creatives. Then when you're done, head to learnsquared.com and take some of the same courses Rene has over the years. That helped him on his journey. Remember, all of our first lessons are absolutely free. I've been your host, Aaron Danda. Till next time.